Lavanda, que te quiero lavanda. Lavender, how I love you lavender. Violet eyes, indigo lashes, mountains at dawn, rivers at sunset.
Well, good day, good evening, welcome, bienvenidos. I wish all of you here in Zoom and joining us live, watching from Facebook, and of course, those of you who will be watching us on the recording, the best on this really here in the United States historic day, Juneteenth, also known as Jubilee Day, which commemorates in 1865 the official end of slavery because the US troops went into Galveston, Texas to let folks there know that they actually had been freed 2 years prior with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 by Abraham Lincoln. It took 2 years before the word got out to everyone. And that is why we celebrate on June 19th, Juneteenth. And it's been a holiday that folks have been celebrating for many, many years in their communities. But now we officially have it as a federal holiday, and I'm glad to be with you on this day. Well, those of you who are here live in Zoom and watching are here today for the one, the only Collectibles lesbian trading card reading series featuring the poets from Headmistress Press and this wonderful, wonderful trading card series that they've developed. It's the vision of the poets at Headmistress Press, the founders, Meriam and Risa Denenberg. And we will today be hearing from Judith Barrington, sharing and discussing the work of Janice Gould. We will also have the wonderful voices following that, our live open mic. Well, I'm your host, as I said, Sandy Unone. I'm the author of Boats for Women from Salmon Poetry, and I could not be happier than to be welcoming Judith and Janice posthumously, as well as readers Amanda Vong and Drysdale, Meriam, and Raki Kopernick. Well, before I introduce Judith to you, as well as Janice via their trading cards, just a reminder that you can purchase these unbelievable cards, as well as all the Headmistress Press titles at the website, at Headmistress Press's website. And we'll be sharing that periodically during the chat for the program. We're live, the chat is live. So as I always tell people, send your appreciation in droves to today's featured reader and our open mic poets, as all will be sharing their tremendously prismatic work with us. We began the series last July, and we've been with you every third Saturday. And I've so enjoyed this gathering of poets that I've really often longed to meet, and sharing poets I've long since read. And along the way, I've heard new voices and new perspectives. Today is no exception, as I have the immense pleasure to introduce to all of you Judith Barrington, card number 66, a powerful voice in so many realms, whether it be poetry, memoir, or the teaching of both. And like when we heard from Audre Lorde, Julie Marie Wade talking about Audre Lorde a couple months ago, there is no denying that Judith Barrington's reach stretches across generations of writers now and for decades to come. And I could not be more happy than to introduce her, because she is also one of my Salmon Poetry sisters. And she will be introducing many of you to the equally necessary and critical work of Janice Gould, card number 5 in the series. Well, let me share with you the official biographies off of the cards first. First, we will begin with Judith Barrington's card. Judith Barrington was born in 1944 in Brighton, the gay capital of England. When she was 19, her parents drowned. She moved to Oregon in 1976, where she met her partner of 40 years, Ruth Gundel. Barrington is the author of 5 poetry collections and 2 chapbooks, a memoir, and a text on writing literary memoir, The Art of Memoir. I'm sure many of you know it. Now in its 12th printing, her many awards include a Lambda and the Robin Becker Prize. She is much sought after as a writing teacher over the past 30 years. She has taught creative writing at various US and European universities and at many summer writing workshops. She was for several years on the faculty of the MFA program in creative writing at the University of Alaska, Anchorage, and she is the co-founder of the Flight of the Mind writing workshops for women and one of the founders of Soapstone, a writing retreat for women. She writes cogent, vigorous poetry, says Publishers Weekly, and Ursula K. Le Guin wrote that Judith's memoir, Life-Saving, is a, quote, sunlit picture of a woman young, wild, and wildly alive. I couldn't agree more, as it was, as I also reviewed that memoir myself back a little while ago. Would you please, as now, learn a little more about Janice Gould. Janice Gould was born in California in 1949. She is a Concow, Maidu writer and scholar, and her most recent book of poems was Doubters and Dreamers, published by the University of Arizona Press in 2011, which was a finalist for both the Colorado Book Award and the Binghamton University Milt Kessler Poetry Book Award. Her other poetry collections are Alphabet from 1996 and the collection, which I'm so glad to have a signed copy of when I got to meet her in Nebraska, Beneath My Heart from Firebrand, as well as Earthquake Weather also from 1996. She also published with Headmistress Press the book Seed, which I have, but I left it in Missoula, Montana when I was reading it this past week. My apologies, everybody. She taught women's studies and ethnic studies and Native American studies at the University of Colorado, and her PhD was completed at the University of New Mexico. She was the Native American writer in residence at the School for Advanced Research in Santa Fe, and the second person to hold this honor. She earned many, many awards for her writing from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Astria Foundation, as well as being Pikes Peak Poet Laureate. And she sadly passed 2 years ago on June 28th, 2019. Again, I'm so grateful for Judith lifting up the voice today of Janice Gould. Thank you.
Ah, that's it. No, I'm not muted. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Headmistress Press, for this amazing series, which I caught some of, but I will go back and listen to the ones that I missed. It's a wonderful idea, and the trading cards are fine things to have with the biographies and the pictures of the writers who we admire. So I encourage you to look at the website and find those. I want to be grateful. I'm grateful for everybody who showed up today. And in particular, I want to say my best friend in England, my adopted sister, and the amazing poet of great fame in the UK and around the world, Mimi Calvati, who some of you will know her work. And she showed up and we thought for a while it was going to be the middle of the night, but we both had the arithmetic wrong. And it turns out it's not the middle of the night. So thank you for coming, Mimi. And everybody else, old friends, I see some old friends here and new faces, and just can't do it by everybody's name, but it's really great. So thank you for being here. It's a reading that I've looked forward to. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to share the work of Janice Gould. And in fact, here I am going to do something that will, can you see that? I hope you can see that. You should be seeing a picture of Janice. Yes, good. So it's a great opportunity to share Janice of blessed memory, who was a friend and a colleague. For many years, we shared times at the Flight of the Mind, where she was invited to come and teach, and also at Soapstone, which was the writer's retreat that Janice was on the board for many, many years. And whenever she and Mimi were in the area, they would come to the work parties, which was how we renovated a cabin over a long time. And she and Mimi put a lot of muscle power into getting that cabin ready for the writers. So it's an honor to share her work. We also shared fun times, music times, poetry times, and talks about writing, of course, and poetry in particular. I'm going to start this reading by reading two poems about the writing of poetry. We poets love to navel gaze and look at our own process. And I have one that I'm going to start with, one of my own. And it's from, I'm reading my own poems. I'm reading from the latest collection, which is Long Love, New and Selected, and it's from Salmon Poetry. It's a compilation of 6 previous books. The poem. It hides in my heart, waiting as if in the small circle at the middle of the labyrinth. I walk towards it, but the path turns away by a purple foxglove, and I must follow the windings that will in the end lead me to the center. It smells of cedars and honeyed skin, cappuccino with grated chocolate, the brine of its own body's betrayal. Like a chestnut horse, it hides in shadow, one white sock and the moist gleam of an eye announcing its steady presence. It is lodged in my heart like a stone in the shoe. Each time the great muscle contracts, I feel it rubbing the same tender spot. There is no avoiding it, no limping or hopping, no shaking it to a more comfortable place, no stillness that can ease the bruise, except the stillness of a motionless heart. It is the door behind which somebody stands, waiting to kiss and be kissed. And now here's one from Janice, who also liked to think about what it meant to write poems. Conditions for poetry. It should be dark, not absolutely, but opalescent as dawn in the hour before sunrise, or the blue-gray of evening as twilight gathers over the mountain. The air should be chilly, and the only sound the small mechanical heartbeat of a clock in another room. If it is morning, coffee is called for, oily, aromatic. If evening, a glass of red wine, translucent, smelling of cherries. Preferably it is Friday, with rain pattering the window, Bachianas brasileiras pouring from an old radio in a mahogany cabinet. And we are in Berkeley or Berlin. If Berkeley, the rain smells of the sea or of laurel and redwood. If Berlin, the air is rank with cigarettes and traffic. Branches of linden trees shudder in the wind. A presence stands just beyond the closed door to your room, attentive, listening, or perhaps not listening, not there, not even thinking of you, austere in her own life, busy and elegant as tapestry, fantastic as a fugue. Okay. That one I was reading from the lovely Headmistress Press collection, The Force of Gratitude. I think that's the one that Sandy left behind. And it's a beautiful book here. And I'll be reading a few more from this collection a little bit later on. That poem that I just read says so much about Janice. The reference to the Bachianas brasileiras, which are Brazilian pieces of music by the composer Villa-Lobos, who was a classical guitarist, just like Janice. And Janice was a fine classical guitarist. It also somehow speaks to her wide intellectual curiosity that took her chasing after all kinds of things that interested her. The other thing that I find very reminiscent of Janice is the reference to the glass of red wine, not just a glass of red wine, but translucent and smelling of cherries. Janice knew her wines and invariably had a preference for a particular wine with a special meal, which we all always appreciated about her. I think as long as we're talking about her musical self, I would like to share a picture here. In fact, I'll share two pictures. Wait a minute, that's not right. Sorry, I got the wrong one. Here we go. Here is a very old picture at Flight of the Mind in 1997. And believe it or not, that's me with all the hair, pretending to play the guitar because I had played it long, long ago and had forgotten all about it, but Janice was a great teacher. And this is Janice, looking young and sweet and little tomboyish as she did. And we're both having fun with the Ryders sitting us around us at Flight. I think there's another one. Oh yes, here is Janice playing her accordion, which she loved to do. She was a great tango fiend, and she, at Flight, when we were all really, really excited with creative energy, she would sit down and play music, and a lot of people would just get up and dance around and have a lot of fun. And this is at Flight on the McKenzie River, which is a wild and scenic river, Oregon, a most beautiful place that we met every summer for 17 years with about 100 writers every week. So I'll get out of that and come back to look at all of you. I want to say that one of the greatest gifts of Janice's poetry that was really important to me right at the very beginning from her first book, was how she included work about being a lesbian long before she knew how to find acceptance, or even if acceptance was ever going to be findable. At about the same time that she was writing about that frightening yet joyful love, sometimes love for straight women, I too was trying to capture in my poems that very damaging experience, the love that felt so right and yet at the same time so wrong. This is an early poem of mine that comes from that same experience. If I could actually put my hand on it, of course. Yes, here it is. Sorry. This is called Lesbian. It's a great title. You know that in the bookshop, if there are young women browsing in the books, they'll sometimes pick it up and look at the list of contents, and you know that's the one they're going to look at surreptitiously behind the bookshelf. Okay, Lesbian. Nobody said the word when school dismissed two girls who lay in the long grass, hand in hand. Friends sniggered, said things I couldn't hear, but I strolled across the muddy field as if by chance, watching the long grass from the corners of my eyes. I did not think the word as her hand moved mine to her breast and she became my first lover. The word waited, stranger than death, while we touched each other's bodies. Later, I blamed her, thinking I was sick. I was so young, I said. You took advantage of me. But we never said the word, and she drank each day. The first time I heard it said aloud, my sister and her friend were talking PE teachers, and I had already loved 3 women. My stomach tipped, stopped breathing. Hot pools of blood flooded my face. It was springtime. There was a weeping willow and daffodils and this word bumping around in the landscape. Early on, when writing about being a lesbian was still very scary, I created a persona. That you realize that we poets like personas. It's we created a character who wasn't me, but in fact was me in this case, who could speak for the poem and allowed me to write in the third person using she instead of I, which at the time felt safer. It was something, it was just a gimmick really, but it allowed me to say things that I wasn't sure I knew how to say if I was saying I in the poem. The persona that I created, I named the dyke with no name. Of course, not naming anything was what I was into early on about being a lesbian. She, the dyke with no name, allowed me to write about a lot of different topics, and she was very persistent, and she appeared in each of my books. When I thought she was gone, she would come back and have something to say about another subject. So she's often in each book, sometimes more than once. This is just one of her poems I'm going to read you. It comes from 3 years that I spent living in Spain in the early 60s, which is again a long time ago. During the era when Franco was actually still in charge. It was not only the early 60s, but it was a very Catholic country at the time. And I was identifying a lot with the guilt that was swirling around in that very Catholic air. The dyke with no name thinks about God. Long ago in Spain, she watched women climb the steps to the huge basilica across the square, scarves tied over their hair, heads down as they sidled in, furtive in their great desire. She envied their passion, the soaring vault under which they knelt, the gaunt body of the statue whose eyes rolled up white and resigned from the head that lolled to one side, resting on ribs. The banks of candles sputtering in holy air, and the great lover waiting back there in the darkness. The dyke with no name recognized the secret thrill, masked by downcast eyes and the fear of discovery when they glanced across the square towards her window as if they felt her watching. But what she recognized most as they slid through the enormous brass-studded door was their shame, the way their bodies shrank into the black folds of their clothes, as if to say, I'm sorry, as if to say, I'm full of unseemly passions, as if to say, as she herself would say through the years to come, I am unworthy, I am nothing, and in the seductive light of 1,000 candles, I am yours. Okay, so going back to Janice, oh, that's interesting. Silent clapping. I love that. Moving back to Janice, I'm going to go back to Janice's most recent book from Headmistress. This one is called Seed, and I'll say something more about this book later. But right now, I want to read. I read a poem, 2 poems actually, from this book. And some of Janice's poems are real story poems, narratives. I love the stories that are in her work. And I think particularly a lot recently about this poem, because Ruth and I recently went with 2 friends to spend some time, 3 nights out on the Columbia Gorge. And we ended up just renting a house by chance in a little village called Lisle on the Washington side. And Lisle, I will tell you, has probably changed not one bit since Janice went there, I don't know, was working in a cannery on the Oregon side back when, long ago, and it appears in this poem. So it's called Mrs. Ryder's Hands. I'd met them in the cannery, Mrs. Ryder and her middle daughter, Patsy, a blonde with a chortling laugh and swinging hips. Engaged to an Air Force guy, Patsy told common jokes that shocked, but other times amused me. September passed, and I hung out with them. When it turned early fall, they invited me to Lisle, where they lived, across the river. I went with them after work in their old Studebaker. Outside their white frame house stood a line of cedars that blocked the north wind. It was a cozy place, an old farmhouse with an oil-burning heater and a new TV in a fake wood cabinet. The first couple of weekends, Patsy and I did the only things it seemed there were to do. Had a Coke at the bowling alley in White Salmon and rode horses on the tableland above the Columbia River. They gave me Patsy's room when I visited, while she slept in the cottage next to the house that had been her grandma's quarters. The room had a sloping ceiling and a small window that looked out on a nearby Douglas fir and the long pasture. From her bed, I could see fading yellow grass, a dark lapis sky, the wooded hills of Oregon. When I stayed with the Ryders, I got up early, had my coffee, chatted with Patsy's father, who drove equipment in a road crew. He told me about hunting deer in Eastern Oregon and how some city slickers would shoot wild burros, not knowing the difference. One Sunday at their place, I woke up to a blustery morning, rain, low clouds, and wind twisting the cedars. Mrs. Ryder had gotten out a plastic pan and was making bread in the warm kitchen. No one else was awake. It was peaceful drinking coffee, watching her sift the flour and start the dough. Her hands reminded me of my mom's, soft but capable and hardworking. She turned and kneaded the dough, rolling it over, pushing it with her knuckles. I'd seen my mom do this many times. I remembered the way my mother shoved her hair with the back of her wrist, as this woman did. Suddenly, I ached, wishing I could see my mom again, though we seldom got along. Mrs. Ryder punched her dough a final time. She sighed, turned the pocked and yeasty brain, pushed it with both fists. It disgusts me, she began, that you want to kiss my girl. I've seen how you watch her, and believe me, if I ever catch you in the same bed, you'll never set foot in this house again. She paused and looked at me directly. Do you understand? My heart crumbled. I stared at her hands, too dumb to blink. That's a crazy, horrible story. So I mentioned that she wrote lovely story poems, and that's a great example of how she will take the time to give the detail and unfold the story in the poem. Sometimes, though, her poems I think of as being more reflections as a result of the stories that she told, and this is one of those, I think, in the same book, very close to that poem. It's called Contradiction. Contradiction. Rebellious, I am called, whenever I scowl, energetic fists pounding walls, one foot smashing the door. Insanity, they say, the girl's crazy. I am sane enough, but utterly constrained. Tough, that's what I want to be, in jeans and blue work shirts, my cropped hair tousled by the wind. Next to pretty girls, I am a tomboy, running hard, crossing boundaries of decorum, envious of freedom, wanting to shape my own. Inwardly, I know myself to be night, full of shadows, moonsick, easy to follow the heart into forests, snowfields, to gaze at the frozen creek or ice-edged pastures where horses graze. Silence is my name when I stand tantalized by another girl's grace, ardent, pretending I do not see. No reaching across that chasm, clearly a sin that never feels wrong, except when I am found out. One of the things that I like about Janice's poems that I identify with myself is that almost always a horse appears in her poems. And when I was putting my poems together for my collected volume, I was astonished to find that the poems that had nothing whatsoever to do with horses, a horse would sort of creep in there and be at the corner watching the proceedings. I'm gonna go back to my collection now and read the poem that was the title poem for the book previous to this. It was a book called The Conversation. And let's see where it is, 136. And yeah, this one probably speaks for itself. It has an epigraph from Robert Frost from the poem Out, Out. And the epigraph reads, and they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs. The conversation. It's not that I blame them. How often have I too turned back to my living life, leaving the dead to hover around in dreams, or pop into sight as a back view, walking with a familiar gait towards the park. Just because I'm dead now, I can hardly ask them to hang out nearby, lost for language, lost for gesture, lingering just to show willing. It's not even as if I have somewhere to go. I've told them often enough, the end is the end. So off you go to affairs of state or of the heart, to money worries, doctors' offices, children who threaten to turn out all wrong, or so you say. Anyway, what will we do now if you stuck around here? It's too late for that conversation we never had. Although it's just interesting to discover that I still wish I'd found a way to get it going. The end may be the end, though some piece of me, not quite finished, has kept the words that belong in that talk, stuffed inside my mouth, which is firmly closed, like my eyes, though my lids are no longer weighted with coins, bus fare into the next world, which of course doesn't exist. But what if a bus should come along, or a rowboat to cross the river, or even a cruising yellow cab? Would I get on board, curious to find out where they're headed? Take a tour, like on that cold, cold bus in Granada that stops at Lorca's family home, where on August the 18th, they came to arrest the poet. A day later, he was dead, going nowhere except into history, no transport required. Thank you. At the end of that poem, I take an unexpected turn, and something that I try to do in my poems and very rarely succeed, to make a really unexpected turn. And in that one, I found myself on a tour bus in Granada that stops at Lorca's family home. Ruth and I mentioned Ruth several times. Ruth, of course, is my life partner. Ruth, it was mentioned, I think, on the card that it was of 40 years, but it's now, I think, 43. So 43 and counting. Ruth Gundel, who is on your screen. Anyway, in the year 2006, Ruth and I rode that bus in Granada, and we got off at the Huerta San Vicente, which was the Lorca's summer home, where he was in fact arrested before being murdered at the beginning of the Spanish Civil War. And Janice's second book, which I've mentioned before, The Force of Gratitude, Headmistress Press, could almost be said to be an homage to Lorca, to the poet Lorca. One of her notes in the back of the book reads, the term gacela was used by Lorca for his volume El Divan del Tamarit, which included both gacelas and casitas. The gacela was a form that she used several times in this book. Well, I won't talk about the form because I could go on rather boringly, but for too long. But it reminds me of an aspect of Janice that I did love and admire, and that is her intellectual curiosity. Not only did she work extremely hard to obtain her PhD, she was always in my knowledge of her, an independent scholar. She pursued avenues of music and poetry that delighted her, and Lorca was one of them. This poem of hers, I'm going to read one of these poems. It's dedicated to Lorca, and it's an easy mix of the old and the new, because it goes back to Lorca and knowing about the forms of the poetry, but it also was a poem that she wrote to help promote Lavender Review, a online publication of lesbian poetry and art. So she brought Lorca together with that desire, which I find quite amazingly wonderful. And she took a line of Lorca's to inspire her. The line of Lorca, which is a famous line, is verde. What is that line? Verde que te quiero verde, green, how I love you, green. And Janice called her poem Lavanda, que te quiero lavanda, lavender, how I love you, lavender, after Federico Garcia Lorca. Lavender, how I love you, lavender, violet eyes, indigo lashes, mountains at dawn, rivers at sunset. Lavender, how I want you, lavender, scent of lilac on your neck, floral hint of wine we sip, your flashes of wit, sweet, dark, tender, like shadows on snow, like broken branches, beguiling like a girl, your body, a meadow where daylight lingers into long hours and twilight is somber, quiet, and pensive as stars appear slowly in a deep purple sky. Ausencias y nostalgia, la triste música del tango, fog in November on the streets of San Francisco, smell of baked bread and black coffee, taste of pastilles, lavender stones, and penumbra. Your beautiful mouth in a bruising month of winter. That poem is beautiful, and it also really accentuates how much she loves the sound of words and how she plays with the sounds of words. But that's a really beautiful one. Okay, let's see. I have no idea what the time is. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. Going back to my collection, there's some crows for you. I like crows. Crows startle the clouds with grievances never resolved and warnings blurted into thin air. Once in a while, the cries of all those who tried to survive pour from the funnels of their throats. No wonder we never really listen. Like most animals, crows tell the truth. Working hard to penetrate our tiny tubular ears, they cackle on telephone lines while we watch TV. Once I did listen to a crow, but even when I had heard his whole story, there was nothing I could do. Next, I thought I'd have to listen to squirrels and coyotes. I like to think I deal with my share of rotten truths, but I couldn't bear to kneel down in damp grass and listen to the hedgehog or the mole. Okay, I'm going to jump a little here. So I realize that we're getting a little bit up in time. Yes, I know that. Sorry, I'm going to skip a couple of poems that I thought I was going to read because I see that time always goes faster when you're reading and you think you've got time. I'm going to go back to Janice's most recent book, Seed, and it has a lovely cover photo, which I don't think you can see very well, but there's a tiny little Janice in the front, a little girl looking like she's about to burst into laughter. And behind her is her father, Jeffrey, who in the 1990s transitioned and became Barbara. And that was a whole experience that Janice did write about several times. I don't know if I have time to read that one right now, but I think what I'm really most want to do is to go talk a little bit about how Janice and Mimi, who is here on this Zoom call, Mimi Wheatwin, her lifetime partner, they were fine models of loving lesbian partners and always really important for me to see. And back in the days when there weren't that many long-term partnerships in our community, and they were together, and we saw them when they were here in Portland, and we went to visit them when they were living elsewhere, but always wanting to come back to the West. When they were in Colorado for a while, and Arizona, and all over the place. But anyway, I want to say welcome Mimi, and how honored I am to be able to read Janice's work and to get back familiar with it. It was wonderful to go through these books and to really to see how much she had influenced my work, and how important it had been to all of us as she produced volume after volume, talking about all the things that mattered, at least to me and probably to many, many people. So that she also wrote very lyrically about domestic life and partnership. Her work was full of observation and lyrical description, and she never, I don't know, she never skipped over the important things, and I found that a very useful model. I have a poem that I wrote, I think was probably very much influenced by, we had a conversation, Janice and I, about marriage one time, and I can't remember exactly what provoked it, but it must have been all the fighting went on about marriage and how uncertain we were about it and so on. And it resulted in quite a lot later in my writing this poem, which I'd like to share. This is called On Getting Married for the Third Time, and it's dedicated to Ruth. Number one, I did what I was supposed to. It was expected, so I joined the crowd, tramped up the aisle in white drag, drunk, and promised unpromisable things. There was not much wrong with him, except conventional masculinity and an old-fashioned definition of the word wife. The real doozy was my being a lesbian. Yes, well before I hitched myself to the coattails of his morning suit, I had been hitching to dresses, petticoats, even those tight pencil skirts of the 50s and 60s that shortened a woman's stride, but clung nicely to rounded buttocks. 11 months in, that first one hit me and threatened to expose me as a pervert. But number two was a very good man. I needed him at the time, and he graciously agreed to be needed for a couple of years. Enough said. Number three, hooray, is the real deal. Not the wedding, you understand, since there wasn't one in the usual sense. What would be the point after 34 years of building what some would call a marriage? What we built was called our life, a life of outlaws, if you think of a relationship, if you think it needs laws. But what we made was recognizable even to the most conventional of our neighbors. A castle with solid walls and a wide portico where an animal, our familiar in its black or red or black and white coat, would lie beside us, while the Norway maple, only 3 feet tall when the city planted it, grew right through the power lines. That tree became its own castle with a dim interior of woven branches, mysterious to passers-by who looked up into the maze, took photos on their iPhones, and watched blue jays and crows, squirrels and hummingbirds busy with their lives. Around year 25, the magnolia we bought at an auction to help pay off Marcia's medical bills finally shot up above the porch railing and saluted us where we sat with our gin and tonic at sunset, its succulent, creamy trumpets shaking the foundations of everything. Thank you. Oh dear. I need to end this. I see that we're running out of time. So I was going to end with a poem from Janice's earlier book, but what I actually want to end with is a very, I'm going to screen share a very short clip. This is from, it's from a movie that I made about soapstone. The the writer's retreat that we built over a long period of time. And I can't find it. Sorry. It's coming, it's coming. Ah, here it is. Janice was a very big part of this. I mentioned that she was on the board, and that she and Mimi came many times to work parties when we would work. This is the creek that it was built on. I'm gonna show you a tiny clip from the end of a work party that we had. Here we go. All reading, we would read poems on the terrace at the end, and here we go. This will just tell you something.
Ached. Sometimes in Oregon's plentiful rain, sometimes in the hot sun, which provoked quick and noisy dips in the ice-cold swimming hole. We took breaks to watch the resident kingfishers or the salmon, to identify native plants and trees, or to gather in a group to talk about writing.
That's where I wanted to get to.
Judith, can you hit the screen share again? I know it's a really short clip, but we didn't actually get to see the clip. And I would love if we could see the image.
Oh, you didn't see any of it?
No, we heard it. We heard the video.
Oh.
So you just have to press on the icon probably of that video for it to come up. And I'll let you know if it comes up.
Oh dear. Ah, wonder why.
No worries. No worries.
Ah, well, it's up. Maybe
you have to screen share at the bottom. There's a blue box. You have to click that.
Yeah.
I've got that. Okay. I'm trying. No, that's not it. Wait a minute. Here it is.
Yep,
okay.
You're gonna get it. There it is. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well, let me play that little bit again. Here we go.
Until our muscles ached. Sometimes in Oregon's plentiful rain, sometimes in the hot sun, which provoked quick and noisy dips in the ice-cold
You
swimming
missed the
hole.
nakedness the first time.
We took breaks to watch the resident kingfishers or the salmon, to identify native plants and trees, or to gather in a group to talk about writing.
Yeah, that's where we went to. And I wanted you to see, this is in the cabin after we've done a hard day's work. And here, this is Mimi right here. I mean, this is Janice right here, sitting on the bottom step, talking to Mimi, her love of her life, sitting up on the step above. And the rest of these are volunteers who have been working probably along with 50 or 60 others of us through a hard day and really having fun doing it. I also want to just give a little due nod to our very dear old dog outside the door, Dee Dee of blessed memory, who I like to think her spirit is somewhere where dog spirits go, and perhaps is with Janice, because she was so close to Janice in this picture. She may have stated that way. Anyway, this is Janice at the end of a workday, eating and talking and doing all the things that we love to do together. And I guess I'll leave you with that image at the end. So thank you very much for hearing and listening everything. I'm going to stop sharing here. Thank you so much. It was fun to do.
Thank you so much, Judith. Judith Barrington, card number 66, sharing the work of Janice Gould, card number 5. And if we just take a moment to unmute, and so that it's not the silent applause, but the actual applause.
Oh.
Feel free to unmute yourself. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
And how wonderful to have both Ruth and Mimi with us today. So I want to just particularly say welcome to the two of you. I was just so struck by how both the poems and the narratives, the stories that you shared about Janice, and the poems that you shared, the stories and the poems, your own and Janice's, we're, as you mentioned, really often in conversation and highlighting all those contradictions in lesbian life, but doing that in a way that, you know, braided and amplified all those turns that you talked about, you know, every turn that a conversation can take, and even the way a contradiction can kind of turn and spin, and as well as that long love devotion to, you know, living the life of outlaws. What an extraordinary braiding of your being in community with Janice as a person, but of course Janice as an artist and activist. Thank you so very, very much, Judith.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. It's wonderful.
Well, my friends, as I tell you all the time, really, this series, to quote Janice's and Judith's collection, this series is born out of a long love and also the force of gratitude. And I want to encourage you to support what Headmistress Press does so well, bringing us the writing and the voices, and of course the trading cards in these series that bring kind of literary sisters and lovers together in legacy and in conversation and in contradiction. So I want to encourage you, feel free to go over to the Headmistress Press website to get your fabulous trading cards. And of course, why not pair them with a collection from Headmistress Press, you know, like Seed or The Force of Gratitude. All of the titles make grand gifts at any time of the year, and of course supports Headmistress Press, which supports you by bringing the voices of LBT writers into print. Well, now to our open mic. I'm so excited to get to hear a few more voices today. We'll be listening to, you know, a brief 5-minute constellation from each of our 4 writers. And first today, I am so happy to be able to welcome Amanda Vong. Amanda was born in Port Arthur, Texas, and raised in Southern California. She's a first-generation queer Vietnamese Chinese poet, sound artist, and filmmaker. She is the recipient of the 2019 Idstrom Family Prize for Creative Writing in Poetry. And she designed, printed, and handbound her recent chapbook, Body of Water, at the Creative Writing Program at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Her work has appeared in such publications as Matchbox Magazine, Chinquapin Literary Magazine, A3 Review and Press, the Aurora Poetry Anthology, and more. Would you please welcome Amanda Vong?
Hi, everyone. It's very nice to share this space with all of you. And thank you, Judith, for reading your poetry. It was really wonderful to hear Janice's work and also your work, being introduced to both actually for the first time. So I look forward to reading more work from the both of you. I'm gonna read like 5 poems. I'm sure they'll probably be like a minute long. But yeah, most of my poems are like based on like family. I'm gonna read a dad poem because tomorrow's Father's Day. So the first one's called In November. In November. 1. Water has weight. It takes time for the sun to dry things. I find a dead gopher curled up in a pile of leaves. 2. My mother grabs my wrist and says, Your body is my body. I want to be a fish sliding out of her hands. 3. The woman behind the counter tells her coworker, my mom doesn't trust me because my sister's a whore. 4. The ivy crawls up the side of our brick house. I imagine it reaching for a cloud, a body, something soft to burrow into. That was one poem. The next is called Dusk. Dusk. We buy BB guns from the local Walmart and take them into the garage to shoot cans on a stool. We sit on the floor, loading the guns, drinking wine from jam jars. By the end of the night, our clothes trail along the backyard to the back porch and then into the room. The branches outside of the window quiver. That was Dusk. The next one is called Leave the House. I peel your oranges because your nails aren't long enough to puncture the skin. You bite your nails because you have anxiety. You get cruel because you're insecure. I want to get away from you because Viejo said that rage breaks good into doubts. I end up staying. Then I tell you I feel lonely. You tell me I'm not lonely, I'm just longing. I get angry at you, so I take in a cat and I keep it even though I hear you sneezing. I don't care, allergies aren't real, it's all in your head. Stop encouraging your head. But you keep sneezing. I don't want to listen, so I run because I love this cat. I'll forget you're allergic if I see the colors of the neighborhood blurring by. I catch my breath on the porch and I hear lyrics coming from the house. Keep it dumb, make it soft. The cat climbs the screen door because she's hungry. Then I realize we need to be more patient. I want to go inside and apologize for being selfish. Maybe you'll apologize for being cruel. I go inside and you're standing in the living room with boxes. You're telling me to leave and to take the cat too. The cat scurries into the house between my legs. The beads of sweat dripping from my forehead feel like insects crawling down my face. I have 2 more. This one's called In Quarantine. I wrote this one last summer. I was living in like a red tagged old house and it was like in an industrial lot. It was very cheap rent. This is called In Quarantine. It's sweet to do nothing. But today I feel unremarkable because the sky is cloudy and blue glows make my back ache. I've never heard anything like it. A dumpster being slammed against concrete. It's sweet to do nothing, but I want to hurl a shoe at the wall. I lie in bed and think of the warmth of her knee on my shoulder and her index finger on the tip of my collarbone. It's sweet to do nothing, to watch her bend over, pull up her socks, and gaze at a spot in the yard. She says, "There's poetry everywhere." It's sweet to do nothing. I take note of the leaves swaying in the spring wind and the cat that lies on her back, waiting to be touched. Thank you. And then this last one is a dad poem. Happy Father's Day. This one's titled After 10 Years. After 10 years. 1. My father's shirt screams, "Don't mess with Texas." He says that we're the only Asians in this town, but I've only been here for 4 hours. How would I know? My father drives a blue Toyota Tundra. It's tall, not big, not the Ford F-150s they drive around here. We break at a stoplight that barely hangs on its wires, and a woman crosses the street on a BMX bike. The speaker on her handles are blaring, "Oh, oh, sometimes I get a good feeling." 2. My father needs snacks to stay awake, so we fill the cooler with jackfruit and jerky. Playing a song, I make him guess what year it's from. Out the window, the greenery blurs as we cross marshland on a bridge, and I think I see a gator swimming along the muggy Toledo Bend. I need to pee, but we can't stop yet. That flag is hanging off a rain gutter. 3. My father used to tie his long black hair into a ponytail, but now he's bald, and reasons that he got really sad when Mom and I left. I fall asleep for half an hour. When I wake up, all of my father's snacks are gone. His belly is bigger. His eyes are half closed, ready to shut for sleep. The truck swerves across the yellow line to pull over. He kneads his eyes with his calloused palms and laughs, then says, I think I forgot how to be a dad. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I love that line. It's sweet to do nothing, except that it's so obvious that you've been doing plenty in writing those poems and sharing them with us. And congratulations on the chapbook, which is Body of Water. Thank you, and I hope I will see and hear you again very soon, somewhere here on Zoom. Well, our next reader joining us from over in England, where now it is just about 9 o'clock, a little after 9 o'clock in the evening, is Anne Drysdale, who shared with us that she really goes by Annie. So I'm going to call you Annie. Annie Drysdale was born near Manchester and brought up in London. She has lived in places as disparate as a narrow boat on a canal in the Midlands and a small holding of the North York moors, where she learned stockmanship by experiment and brought up 3 children as a single parent. During this time, she wrote one of the longest running byline columns in the provincial press there. Her 7th volume of poetry, Vanitas, recently joined a mixed list of published writing, including memoir, essays, and a gonzo guidebook to the city of Newport. She now lives in the highest terrace of a mining town in South Wales. And we are so grateful to have you joining us here. Well, I'm on the West Coast. We have many West Coasters here, but joining us today from over in South Wales in the evening. Thank you so much, Annie, for being with us.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm going to start with a poem about someone who was very important to me when I was a lot younger. It's called Queen of Cups. She was my senior by several years. I lusted after her, the way girls do while they are sorting through their new hormones. I have that photograph of the school trip when she, as prefect, supervised our bathing, leading us, wet and laughing, up the beach to our piled clothes and towels. There she is, leaning into the slope, her perfect breasts 2 matching eggs above the waiting cups of the slipped top of her grown-up swimsuit. The hormones fell into place like cast dice. Heterosexuality prevailed, but we were friends until she went away. I filed her memory, my Queen of Cups, spilling herself in that old photograph. They told me she was back. Treatment for cancer. I asked her round to talk about old times, steeling myself to handle any change in her appearance. I swear there was none. I bought cake. I remembered she loved cake and coffee. As I raised the pot to pour, she made as if to stop me. Then she smiled. I have to watch the caffeine nowadays, just the 1 cup. And I, despite myself, stole a swift glance and wondered. Just the one? The next poem is written recently, but again goes back to those Yorkshire days. When I was learning my stockmanship. I'm not doing too badly, though I say it myself. And this celebrates the discovery, the final understanding of the power of cross-dressing. It's called Shearing Day. In a check shirt, buttoned up boys-wise, but not right to the top, perilous, possible, head bent over the tossed fleece, kneeling and reaching to the rolling, stink of sheep, shot through with a whiff of her own armpits, joyfully conscious of the breasts between. Borrowed jeans, dodgy fly, property of a brother, loose and sliding over the hip as she straightens, pulling the neck wool in random handfuls towards her, twisting and teasing it into a greasy rope, learning to tie the bundle tight, then rising, stretching up high to chuck it into the sheet. That action admits to the presence of simple knickers, but hints at the absence of anything under the shirt. She hitches the jeans, lifting a leg can high to step over the rail into the catching pen, choose a fit ewe to drag out onto the floor, upend and offer to the nearest shearer. Offering too the new thing she has discovered here in the shearing shed, proud, pulling her weight, showing her skill, surprising herself with her stamina, shimmering gleefully in and out of her element. She is man among men, doing a man's work. But oh, she is woman now, like never before. Now, there were a couple of other things I was going to read, and then I changed my mind while I was listening to Judith, because she reminded me of how lovely it can be to be in the presence of a lesbian couple whose relationship is just a joy to all around. And I had a friend who died a few years ago, another poet. Her name was U.A. Fanthorpe. And she and her partner, Rosie Bailey, were truly good friends of mine. And I wrote them this villanelle. Just called a villanelle for two friends. The nicest people seem to come in pairs, and it's a double blessing when they do. A comely coupledom with no false airs. A private peace, peculiarly theirs, but which rubs off on other people too. The nicest people seem to come in pairs. A sort of self-sufficiency that shares its comfort without even trying to. A comely coupledom with no false airs. In ordinary day-to-day affairs, each bears in mind the other's point of view. The nicest people seem to come in pairs, an arithmetic paradox which squares their simple sum, creating something new, a comely coupledom with no false airs. Two people, effortlessly holding shares in one another, like the two of you. Nicest people seem to come in pairs, a comely coupledom with no false airs. It's nice to remember you, and Rosie. Somebody was talking, Judith again, I think, about talking to animals. And this is a conversation I had with a dog. Old dog, Easy. We've come at last to an understanding, stopping in the negotiated places where the lead goes on and the treat goes in. No more need for a formal command. That's just as well, you having grown deaf and me not always quick to find the whistle. using your rediscovered puppy strut. You make a daily joy of your new leg. But when the squirrel froze for a moment, a perfect target on the road ahead, you stiffened, then relaxed and let it go. Ah, life's too short. I know, old dog. I know.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I belong to a charity called Cats Protection, which cares for and finds homes for stray and unwanted cats. They help to look after the feral population, or as we prefer to call them, our community cats. They have a scheme called Neuter and Release, where they pay for the operation if the local people can catch the cats. And this is me trying to trap a lovely grey kitten that I've been feeding all summer, in the hope of ensuring that she'd have a future. Got mission impossible. They are closing in, the grizzled exploiters of the silver girl walking the dark street. She's alone, deferring to her destiny. Their blood is up, waiting, they wail and bicker. I too am determined to catch her, but she eludes me, more and more preferring the crude old stagers tempting her with scent, who seek to leave her carrying their shadows. It is her time. She's almost calling. See her play the coquette, chasing dry leaves as the wind rattles them on the tarmac. A dancing princess, soon to be a queen. I can entice her gently to the threshold, but not yet through the door. She will take food from proffered fingers, but avoids their grasp and will not set foot in the careful trap. Great Pan, lend strength to my conspiracy. My failure will mean midwinter kittens, cold, hungry, possibly misbegotten. Come to me, come, oh my Mehitabel. The story actually has a happy ending. She was trapped, she was neutered, and she now has a home 4 doors up the street. She's a lovely cat now. And actually, she's the image of Mary's Emily. Her name is Star. And I'm going to finish with a sonnet, which I'm reading particularly because Risa found it on the internet and said she'd like to hear me read it. So, for Risa, New Fruit. In the last knockings of the evening sun, Eve drinks Calvados. Elsewhere in her life, she has played muse and mistress, bitch and wife. Now all that gunpoint gamesmanship is done. She loves the garden at this time of day. Raising her third glass up to God, she grins. If this is her comeuppance for her sins, it's worth a little angst along the way. A fourth. Again the cork's slow, squeaky kiss. If, as the liquor tempts her to believe, the Lord has one more Adam up his sleeve, he's going to have to take her as she is, out in the garden, in a dressing gown, breathing old apples as the sun goes down. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
That's Annie Drysdale joining us from Manchester this evening. Thank you for staying up, gracing us with your poems. I always love to hear of Villanelle and of course the sonnet as well. And whether or not we catch the cat or not, yes, always looking to catch the cat. So thank you. And I won't say what the cat really means. The cat could mean many things. Always trying to catch her, yes. Thank you so much. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce to all of you honestly person who needs no introduction. But I will just happen to say that she happens to grace card 57. She is the intrepid Mary Meriam, co-founder of Headmistress Press, and as edits mentioned earlier today, the Lavender Review. I love this cover. I always have it behind me, but I take up a lot of space, so you don't always see it, but it's always behind me. Well, Mary Meriam, in addition to co-founding Headmistress Press and editing the Lavender Review, Lesbian Poetry and Art, is also the author of My Girl's Green Jacket from 2018 and the Lillian Trilogy 2015, of course, from Headmistress Press. Her poems have appeared recently in Poetry, Prelude, Subtropics, and the Poetry Review. She teaches in the MFA program at the University of Arkansas, Monticello. I'm so grateful to call her my friend. I love her work, and thank you for allowing me to be with you for this year, to hear the most extraordinary poetry. And I'm now excited that we get to hear your poetry.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And thank you, Judith. It was wonderful. Amanda and Annie, fantastic, great poems. I'm gonna read a poem I wrote just last week. It's called Swimming Pool. And it was inspired by Anna Calvi, a musician in England. I mean, she's a songwriter, she's a singer, she's absolutely fantastic, and I got very, very inspired. So she's got a song called Swimming Pool, and this is after Anna Calvi, in the sense that I was just blasting her music while I was writing this, which I've never done before. And it was just very inspiring. So here it is. Swimming pool. Your decades melting in the cloth around your body, baby. Call me with a moan, saying to save me one by sound, your mouth, your eyelids, lit by inner nouns. How do you do your hair in gilded waves? How do you place your gems in gilded waves? Oh how much longer are the years I have to count? If I could count, I fail. And yet, my silver will one day be yours. I'll send it by a bird with goddess tails, bright gift, a swift compendium of days, too slow to roost. Desire me. I wait so long my feathered nest flips south of you. Desire me, like I desire you. Okay, this next one, I'm gonna screen share. This is from my new collection called Pools of June. And that's coming out from Exot Books on 2222 next February. And the name of this poem is Black Bark. After Anna Mendieta's Tree of Life, which you can see a picture of right here. I decided I wanted to be a Black girl. If I couldn't be a Black girl, I'd be a white girl, but I didn't want to be a white girl. I find a tree and drag the bark on my skin, some grasses and earth, until I am black by the sweat of my own skin. I'm caught by a pool and captured and shipped someplace else. It's such a shitty thing they do to me, but it's only the first shitty thing. One shitty thing after another happens. I wonder why the goddess I pray to allows this to happen. I don't know her anymore, and no one knows me anymore. I will not titillate you with sordid confessions, nor will I dwell upon the horrors inflicted upon me. Instead, I will eat the black beans of my own skin. It was a dangerous decision to become a Black girl. I didn't know my skin would be a red flag and my people would be lynched. But I feel better not being white, since it's the whites in charge that lynch Black girls like me, whether they knot the rope or not. Whether or not you know it or not, the tree where they tie the rope is the tree that bathes my Black skin with tree mercy and consolation, so my Black soul wiggles loose from the noose, junks its losses, and slips past them. So, and I just want to say, I remember you, Janice. I love you. It was wonderful working with you, and such a joy to edit and publish your books. And thank you, Judith, for your beautiful presentation. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Mary. Not only do you hold the space for editing, such important, work. You are a poet and you are an editor and a poet of conscience. And we got to see that glimmer, that glimpse today. And so I very much appreciate you sharing your new work with us. And we look forward to hearing more of it. Always. Well, our final reader today on this Juneteenth is Raki Kopernick. Raki is a queer Jewish writer and the author of The Things You Left from Unsolicited Press in 2020. Raki is a 2021 Minnesota Book Award finalist for that collection, and her book, The Memory House, from the Muriel Press in 2019, was a 2020 Minnesota Book Award finalist as well. The third collection, The Other Body, is from Dancing Girl Press in 2017. Raki's work has appeared in numerous publications and has been nominated for several awards, including the Pushcart Prize for Fiction and the Penn Faulkner Award in Fiction. And she is the fiction editor at Mayday, and she lives in Minneapolis. Thank you so much, Raki, for closing us out today on this wonderful, wonderful example of exquisite writing.
Thanks, Sandy. You did so good on my name. I appreciate it. I know it's hard. I have one of those names. And thank you all so much. Thank you for inviting me. This has been so beautiful and all of your work is amazing. I feel so honored to be here with all of you. I'm just gonna read the first few sections from my chapbook that is called The Other Body by Dancing Girl Press. And if you don't know that press, they do really beautiful, it's all hand printed, screen printed, whatever that word is. So they do really pretty covers. Okay, so here we go. 1. Before you were he, when you were still sort of she, you lived at the surface of your thin skin, heart in your breast pocket, half hanging out, and no one really believed that pronoun. There was no pronoun for you. We were spring chicken fuzzy babies and torn up Carhartts and hoodies without sleeves. Tony Danza, but we were our own bosses. 2. The first time I saw you in a kissing booth, red lip sign, $1 a pop, you were too shy to be working at kissing. Your eyes said, my eyes said, hello, and I chose you out of 3. We made a bonfire in a nylon tent and you ran like hell, quick, in fear of your heart slipping all the way out of your pocket and falling to the ground. A water balloon burst. The first time I saw you, really, before the kissing booth at the kickball game, curly Lebanese hair black around your boy face, your eyes in my eyes in your palm. We had no words necessary. We don't need words to start fires. 3. The second time, really the third time, protesting something homophobic, pictures of gay sex on sticks, laughing, happy to be 20-something and not care what our parents thought we should care about. My gay sex picture on a stick saw your gay sex picture on a stick, then down to the eyes again, the eyes, always the eyes, far enough away, no need to look away, but keep yelling about gay sex on our sticks. I looked away first, which was a first for me. You appearing beside me, you said, you. That became our word, you. I wrote my number on your form, too big with a red Sharpie. You called a week later. 4. The way we all lived back then, one house, 5 people, one phone, a notebook full of scribbled messages, doodles recorded during long distance calls to family in Utah, Chicago, Boston, LA. Sometimes the message got drawn over in dark marker, or pages turned too soon, or written illegibly, or never written down at all. You called, I answered. You said, come over on Friday. I said, I have to go to a party. I'll come after. You said, yes. 5. The first time at your house, clear across the other side of town, the house with the bathtub in the kitchen, whiskey on the rocks, breadcrumbs on the counter I sat on anyway. Let's take a bath, I said, looking at clawfoot feet. Now, here, now, you said, and started rinsing out the tub with an old yogurt container. Me in a black slip, black eyeliner, black fishnets, because the party was a costume party. I rolled the fishnets down, you swallowed hard. Clothes in a breadcrumb trail from the breadcrumb counter. Ice whiskey and skin in the tub. You said. You, I said. Eyes, no other words. Your body like my body, strong shoulders, medium-sized tits, Middle East green skin, a smaller butt, but otherwise the same. Your face not like mine, a darker fire in your eyes. Your mouth smaller, but still full in the lips, full of words I didn't expect. Tough guy mystery shyness I'm always attracted to, disclosing no mystery, just a shallow show of adolescence. I didn't know soon there'd be a real show. 6. Next time at your house across town, upstairs in your tiny room, mattress on the floor, messy sheets, dirty blanket, roommates who never seemed to be home, kissing that never seemed to end. Upstairs, downstairs, bathroom, on the ripped couch, dog hair from a dog that never seemed to be home. Nothing ever seemed to be there but you. 7. Always in a bedroom, your big empty house, or my full of roommates, stinky carpet, moldy, no window in the bathroom house, but always private, without words, just you. We wrote poetry on the walls with blood from our thighs, dripped on the sheets, smeared the rugs, made up our faces, lipstick and rouge. We drank paper bag 40s out of the bottle like high school, sitting on the floor, smoking Newports, Camels, Parliaments out the window. Sometimes even keeping the window closed, lying in bed, talking about how good it was to do that, to be a grown-up. We never bathed in the kitchen bathtub again, but shared showers, back scrubbed, front scrubbed, face mashed, water in eyes pooling between our chests. We were dirty, but we cleaned each other up. This is how it was, until it wasn't. 8. Your bed was small, a single like for kids, but we were small. We fit, we slept a lot, we squeezed together because we wanted to be one person, until we didn't, until I didn't. The first time I didn't want to be you, words from your small mouth in the middle of the night, full lips, words I didn't know were in there. Words that come out in sleep, sleeping body language, forgivable if you're nice when you wake up. You weren't. You pushed me off the bed, I said. So what, I was asleep, you said. You are such a baby, you said. What's your problem, you said. Fuck you. 9. Unopened eyes, tender fuzz, nothing has ever happened before. Spring chickens don't know where to go. Wounded spirit over nothing that is something, but in a few years, nothing again. I have to go now. Why don't you eat some toast? No more crumbs for me. 10. Things hurt most the first time. Maybe that's not true, but it is true. They do. Your sex trying to be love, pushing against bricks at the bottom of your well. My well, an overflow, inside out. Sex is not love except when it is. The beginning of knowing I didn't know what I was going to know. You. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Raki. A whole new appreciation for the kissing booth. I can't believe I didn't have a thought about the kissing booth in that way before, but of course, how fabulous. Thank you. And everybody, before I just kind of make some final remarks and tell you about next month's reading, how about, we unmute again for a round of applause for our open mic readers today: Amanda Vong, Annie Drysdale, Meriam, and Raki Kopernick.
Yay!
Awesome. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Beautiful.
All right.
Well, everybody, I want to also say thank you once again to today's featured reader, Judith Barrington, reading the work of Janice Gould. And of course, I really love it when our readers have been in community with each other and have known each other. There's such a richness to the stories, and how I always am, how I'm always able to hear how the featured poet is really bringing that person into conversation in front of us as they had been in conversation before. I just so appreciate that intimacy of spirit that this reading series has brought together over the months, every month since last July, to hear a dynamic poet like Judith Barrington discussing the work of another legacy poet, and often a person that the person has known, from the Headmistress Press Lesbian Trading Card series. Well, next month, my friends, we will be ending this series, wrapping up a year of the collectibles with a year of the collectibles and collecting memorable readings with a poet who has been a mentor to so many, including myself, the indomitable Robin Becker. Card number 18 will be reading the work of one of her legacy poets, the unforgettable, of course, Elizabeth Bishop. Card number 27. You really do not want to miss our final reading of the series. I can't wait. I wish it was tomorrow, but I'm going to wait for a month and join Robin and Elizabeth Bishop for this reading that will really celebrate all the readers we featured in the series and celebrate each one of you. I want to thank you all for being here today on Juneteenth, and I want to close with an excerpt from Audre Lorde in honor of Juneteenth with each of you, that I'm sharing with you from her book, Sister Outsider, from the essay, "The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House." And here is Audre Lorde. Racism and homophobia are real conditions of all of our lives in this place and time. I urge each one of us here to reach down into that deep place of knowledge inside herself and touch that terror and loathing of any difference that lives there. See whose face it wears. Then the personal as the political can begin to illuminate all our choices. Seemed a rather poignant and fitting way to continue to think about the legacy of Juneteenth over the centuries and into the present. That was Audre Lorde. Well, I am so glad you were all able to join me today. Sandy, you're host of the Collectibles Lesbian Trading Card Reading Series featuring the work and voices of LBT poets from the trading card series. I want to give huge thanks today to Risa Dennenberg and Meriam at Headmistress Press, always for the vision that you have held for this series